Story 1. No, not surprised at all. I am a healthcare worker. When I see people not getting help because of understaffing, crying because they can't afford help, or literally saying, I can't afford to stay alive, I think of people like this. On the floor, we are just told to deal with violence on our own. Now that the elite get targeted, all of a sudden they're talking about security. Forget these folks. Story 2. I heard someone today on the radio who called in to discuss this. He also shared that his wife died of cancer due to insurance denials. He quoted someone he spoke to in the insurance industry who told him, "The American healthcare system is polite genocide of the working class. That's going to stick with me forever." American healthcare insurance companies have contributed more than $120 million to politicians this year alone to protect their interests. The United Healthcare chief executive officer was on his way to an investor conference to essentially brag about the company's $23 billion in profits this year. Deny, defend, depose. Story 3. I currently have United Healthcare. If I were able to cover my children and leave myself out of their issues, I would, but I'm required to cover myself if I want to cover anyone else. I pay them several $100s every month for a service I can't even use until I've paid even more to my doctor to meet my deductible. I feel contempt for him, everyone who helped him, every single health insurance company, and everyone who runs them. They can have sympathy once they've lost everyone close to them because their insurance wouldn't cover life-saving necessary operations. They make money on the misery of others and deserve the same sympathy that a black hole gives the stars it swallows. I am not surprised in the least at the responses and happily contribute to that lack of sympathy. The only ones involved that I have sympathy for are the first responders who had to clean it up. Story 4. Not surprised. Fun fact. The reward for information on the shooter is up to $10,000. That's not even enough to cover the average family deductible on most plans. Story 5. It's funny watching the media tiptoe around the elephant in the room that the vast majority of people are perfectly fine with this guy getting punished. They're clutching their pretend pearls like this is some tragedy or something. Story 6. I will speak to it personally. My sister had multiple surgeries to fix a botched gallbladder removal. She spent most of her life in pain and died of a prescription drug overdose a few years back. She worked as a nurse and still declared bankruptcy twice due to medical bills, and she had insurance from her employer. She spent many hours of her life either fighting to get approval for a procedure or fighting off bills that were sent to her in error due to double billing. Take my story and several million others like this, and you can see why no one has any empathy towards a cruel system like this or those who lead it. I did not expect this comment to get so much attention. Thank you for the support. I would like to add that the people who work in the healthcare system are amazing. My sister was a neonatal intensive care unit nurse and personally saved many lives. I'm glad her story could be told in some small way. Story 7. I have been surprised the reaction has been so consistent. For a country that is typically divided on a lot of topics, this feels like one we are all pretty united on. Story 8. He bragged about the high number of insurance claims his company rejects. Rejections are due to stupid reasons. The company takes pride in this. Millions of people have either died or had their financial lives destroyed because of that. So yeah, I don't feel sad about it. I'm not gleeful, but not sad. If a poor or random middle-class person had been killed, would we have ever known about it to begin with? Story 9. Trigger warning for pregnancy loss. We had United Healthcare when I suffered a miscarriage that required an emergency dilation and curettage. Coverage was denied because the ultrasound technician was out of network and the procedure was deemed elective. As far as my sympathies go, that burden was elective and my personal sympathies to give are out of network. Story 10. Every penny spent on his funeral will come from affecting someone else. While I don't support the killing of anyone, I also have no sympathy for him whatsoever. If you lead a system where you can openly play God and hold others' lives in your hand for profit and champion and profit off ways to more efficiently deny people's ability to pay for the medical care they need, then, frankly, you should expect no sympathy from anyone else when they have a moment of playing God. The only surprising thing about this is that it didn't happen sooner. Frankly speaking, seeing how Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield already walked back the arbitrary limit on anesthesia they implemented, this murder, I'm under no pretenses that it wasn't murder, was almost certainly an objectively good thing for the average person. And that is pretty damning of the entire system. Story 11. This has been such a long time coming. I think there are a number of people who feel a splinter of hope from this. Hope that maybe they will take us seriously, that maybe the disparity will slow down in its growth. Or at the very least, the ultra-rich, whose profits were built by ruining this country, will feel a fraction of the mortal fear we feel with every sickness and injury. Story 12. The guy was responsible for more deaths of Americans than Osama bin Laden. I don't remember too many people lamenting when he got killed. If anything, it seems too many people are hesitant to celebrate Thompson's death. Story 13. Not even a little bit surprised, and frankly, I'm more shocked that it took this long. Chief executive officers in every industry have been exploiting poor people and buying our elected officials. The medical industry is just one of the most barbaric forms of exactly that. Story 14. I read a short story years ago about a guy whose wife died after being denied treatment by an insurance company. He goes to a web chat group to deal with it and meets a guy who directs him to a dark website that has a different take on how to deal with insurance companies. Mayhem ensues until the government steps in with national health to stop the killings. I rolled my eyes at the idea but still felt sympathy for the man's plight. Yesterday, I felt the same way. The concept of it's only business may not be the shield they want it to be. Story 15. I currently have cancer and I have United Healthcare through my employer. I've accumulated over $1 million in medical debt through surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, and immunotherapy. Silly me thought I had pretty good coverage. United Healthcare denied my life-saving surgery and my radiation treatments because I did not seek a second opinion. I would have died had I waited, as my cancer is very aggressive. They said the surgery was considered elective and therefore would not be paying for it. I am genuinely very sorry that someone lost their life, especially as I'm currently being forced to examine my own mortality. I have empathy for his wife and his children, but Lord knows I am struggling to feel compassion for him because of how horrible his company is to their clients. If it truly was a hit because of denied insurance coverage, well, I get it. I am frustrated with the American healthcare system. Story 16. Honestly, no, with the fact that they have the highest denial rate and the chief executive officer went from $2.7 million in compensation in 2015 to almost $52 million this year, I am not surprised in the least. Story 17. The poor cried, "We are starving. There is no more bread, and we have nothing to eat." The rich man said, "Not my problem you don't work for your bread." As if he did not snatch away the grain by his own greedy hands and create filling bread for his own overflowing mouth. The poor cried, "We are dying. There is no more medicine, and we're all ill." The rich man said, "Not my problem you don't take care of yourselves." As if he did not buy all the medicine and raise prices so high the gods themselves would not be able to reach. The poor people stopped crying, and the rich man was satisfied. Until they came knocking at his door one night. Their faces were sunken, their flesh decaying, their eyes sightless. They were monsters of the rich man's own making. As they devoured his flesh, the rich man cried, "Please, spare me." The ravenous zombie said, "Not our fault you fattened yourself for slaughter." Story 18. Absolutely not. Sure, I can't go around saying I support harming people I don't like, but I certainly don't feel sorry for those who had it coming. And I don't care if he's actually a nice person. He ran a company that deals in essentially extorting ridiculous amounts of money from people but only keeping his end of the bargain when it's convenient for him. Forget privatized healthcare and everyone who makes money from it. I'm betting there are thousands of people who lost everything after his company said, "No, we aren't paying." And while I don't think it justifies harm, I certainly see why it might drive someone to it. Live by the sword, die by the sword. Or, as they put it these days, face the consequences. Story 19. Wealth and income disparity is worse in the United States than in late 1700s France. Are you surprised that the working class applauds when bad things happen to the wealthy? Story 20. One of the weird universal constants across the political spectrum here in the United States is the hatred of medical insurance providers. No one has a story about how great their health maintenance organization treated them. but they all have a story about how they got mistreated by one. Given the current economic and political tension here, I'm not surprised it happened, and I'm not surprised most people seem to be perfectly okay with it, and some are even cheering it. People have been pushed to the edge, and the last 8 years have basically accelerated a lot of social and economic problems. Now we're looking at 4 more years of utter chaos, and people just can't handle it. Story 21. I am not surprised. My insurance, HealthNet, denied therapy for my 2-year-old disabled daughter with Down syndrome. We pay out of pocket for everything. Care was too expensive, so we sold our home and are using the proceeds to help her. They can go burn in hell. Story 22. I'm surprised that the Federal Bureau of Investigation got involved so quickly in a shooting of a rich guy in New York. If he was some poor black guy, the Federal Bureau of Investigation wasn't going to get involved. If it was me, a middle-class white guy, the Federal Bureau of Investigation wasn't going to get involved. It really just highlights that there truly is a different tier of everything for rich people in the country. Story 23. Zero sympathy and not surprised. Insurance carriers like United Healthcare are for profit, make billions, and these CEOs are a huge part of that problem because they are not in the business of healthcare. They are in the business of making the most money off of people and incentivizing hospitals to do the minimum care or whatever they will get paid for instead of what will actually help or save the person. United Healthcare had the highest denial rates, and this CEO made a lot of money off other people's deaths or in denying them proper healthcare. So yeah, forget him. Story 24. United Health claim denial rate, 31%. United Health uses faulty artificial intelligence to deny patients medically necessary coverage. United Health Chief Executive Officer Brian Thompson received a total compensation package in 2023 of $10.2 million, a combination of $1 million in base pay and cash and stock grants. United Health Group Chief Executive Officer Andrew Whitty received about $23.5 million in compensation in 2023. The only thing I'm surprised by is that no one has harmed Andrew Whitty yet. Story 25. No, we burn, they burn with us. No one can be surprised given the level of wealth inequality in this country. We are a selfish and violent society. This is the expected outcome. Story 26. I am not surprised. Politicians and corporate media want us to be shocked and horrified by this, but that is not going to happen. I think maybe a growing number of people view billionaires, chief executive officers, and other powerful figures as hedonistic nihilists. So we shrug our shoulders and think of this as a sort of comeuppance. Story 27. I'm surprised it took this long for a vigilante to come out and find their own justice over medical insurance. I will not be one to pull the trigger, but I will not judge the man who did. People die because of chief executive officers like them. Families lose their homes to medical debt because of chief executive officers like them. They make callous decisions because they do not care. Story 28. I really think there has been a change in sentiment over the last few years, probably since COVID. It used to be that if a death like this occurred, comments making light of it, saying they don't care, or going so far as to say he deserved it were downvoted or in the controversial section. People had a much more traditional approach to talking about a death, that no matter how bad the person was, we should mourn, or that no death was a good thing. But wealth imbalance has increased. Seeing as I mentioned Hollywood, we now have films like Joker or shows like White Lotus. People are very actively turning against the rich and powerful in a way we haven't seen since probably the Great Depression. I don't think things are quite at the revolutionary France level yet. The rich still control the media and the news. The breaking point in France was the media turning on the king after he tried to flee. But especially with Trump back in power, things are going to get worse, and there will be much, much more division. Story 29. Not really surprised at all. I think deep down people want to celebrate good conquering evil, even if it was conquered in a violent way. Health insurance is an industry that makes money off denying care for people who need it and having them suffer. It is a truly evil industry. Given how much it affects people negatively, we should be celebrating his death as a victory for humanity. It's no different from celebrating the death of a brutal dictator or despot. It's about time chief executive officers fear for their lives a little bit, because we all fear for ours if we ever get some horrible sickness or injury and have to deal with the corrupt healthcare system in this country. Just know that every cent his family will pay for his funeral will be earned because of someone else's. Story 30. Not at all surprised. People are furious with the state of United States healthcare and the ability of the wealthy to protect themselves from consequences. If anything, I'm surprised that there are more, but think about his family opinions then, yeah, kill his family, 2 opinions. Story 31. Why do Americans resist supporting Bernie Sanders or other politicians who want universal health care? Why is that not the leading issue in elections? Americans pay more per capita than any country on health care, and they have one of the lowest lifespans comparatively. As a Canadian, I am genuinely confused.